Restaurant Unstoppable. Inspire, empower, and transform the industry.
I
Experience for him.
am a new Paul Prudhomme fanboy, and I wish I could have met him when he was still around to get him on the show, just because of what Frank Brightson said about what this guy would do for his people. As far as just from day one, even before you work for me, what do you want from your life, and how can I make that happen? And then following through on it, and it's just amazing. What were the lessons you worked really? Did you both work really close with Paul?
Mostly Pete.
Okay, so what were the lessons? Did he teach you anything about how to be? We need to cement this man's legacy.
Well,
because he just sounds like he was so incredible.
And here's a guy who was 13th child. Okay.
Wow.
He was a big man. When I met Paul, he was 5'35".
Wow.
Okay, and that's a big guy.
Was he tall?
5'9",
Okay.
5'10".
Gotcha.
No, so he was a big fella, and his ability just to do things, to get it done. He went bankrupt 3 times. All right, his first joint was called Big Daddy-O's Patio, and he got married right around the time he opened it to his high school then sweetheart, and I think she was probably 16, and it lasted maybe 90 days, and she flew the coop, and he said to hell with it, and went off. But I mean, he was very resilient, and he knew he could cook. I mean, this guy was magnificent.
He wasn't classically trained.
No, his mama.
Self-taught, yeah.
And what is different about him is because he grew up in a rural environment where you learned how to do the best with what was available to you. It wasn't like he could import snails from France, or it was using French wines to cook with and stuff. No, I mean, he was taking basic ingredients you could either fish for or grow and turning them into magic. And he had the best sense of taste with his kind of food of anybody I've ever met. I mean, he had just an incredible sense of how you work spices and things, and that's what led him. I mean, he designed all of the magic seasoning, the base magic seasoning line, which was 7 products. And he used to sell them out of the restaurant in little Ziploc bags that had about 2 ounces of product in them. And at this point, Paul was our first customer. When we went into business, Cajun Kettle was a pasta manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
We made fresh pastas. And that goes back to me going to Kryvac. Clark Bernier, who was the chef there, taught me about why shelf life, how you make shelf life, the science of what they were doing in bags. And I put that together with pasta, and we made a bagged, vacuum-packed, fresh product that had a 45-day refrigerated shelf life, which nobody had. I mean, we were one of the very first people in the country to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd take the bag, and you'd open it, and you'd kind of wiggle a little bit, and you'd separate the strands and cook it, right? And Paul, I got this appointment with Paul, and I brought him some, and he got, look at this, all right, go cook it, bring it back to me. And from that point on, we were his pasta supplier. And Paul spent the next day, he said, come back tomorrow. All right?
So when you're working with him, was this after he had gone bankrupt 3 times?
Oh, he'd gone bankrupt. Then he got hooked up with the Brennan family in Commander's Palace. And he was brilliant there.
Okay.
And he finally left Ella, who was an astounding human being and the best talent spotter I think I've ever heard of.
Well, you hear his process for finding talent.
Oh, Paul's?
3 interviews, 3 1-hour-long interviews, and it was amazing listening to Frank talk about his experience going through that process. He would come to a room, there was a room full of people, 1-hour interview, he'd leave, the next time he'd come back, same room, fewer people, 1-hour interview, third time, a lot less people,
yes.
1-hour interview. And that's hire slow, fire fast mentality right there.
Right.
And then even before they start, where do you want to be? What are your goals? How can I help you get there? That's just a hint of what you're that's powerful stuff.
Well, Paul was very much into the people who worked with him because he had to put a lot of trust in them. He had to teach them what he wanted them to do and show them his style of cooking, like Aru. Okay, You're supposed to cook it very slowly over fire. It takes 45, 50 minutes. Nah. Let me show you how you do that. You get that oil so it's smoking hot. You dump that flour and you stir like crazy. You don't stop stirring like crazy until it's dark enough to go. And I can make a walnut-colored roux in 9-10 minutes. And you can make it in big quantities. And it just, stuff like that. Paul was just wonderful. And he loved to teach people how to do stuff. Mm-hmm. He gave away, you realize he gave away the formula magic seasonings. You can look it up online. He actually gave you the real formula, the real blends.
Generosity was his MO. You could definitely tell. But generosity, the more you give, the more you get. And I think there is a lot of truth to that too.
Yeah. And Paul was just Paul. Paul had this very magnetic attitude, aura about him. Mm-hmm. And he loved people, and it showed. I mean, he would sit in the back of the restaurant by the door, the kitchen door, and there was a window and a door. And he'd see everything that went out into the restaurant. And his problem was he would have a spoon and he would taste it. And I mean,
that catches up over time.
It also maintains heavy weights. I mean,
Yeah.
it was bad. And Paul went through a whole bunch of different and difficult processes in things he was doing. I mean, it wasn't all smooth sailing for him. Paul had set up, at one point in time, when he was writing the book, okay, he had set up a little side kitchen in what was in a driveway. And he went to Sears and bought the cheapest gas range he could buy and the cheapest electric range he could buy. He went to Woolworths or Walmart or someplace and bought the cheapest pots and pans he could. Now, he says, if they can cook this, you bring in women to cook and different non-professionals and say, okay, I want you to first cook it on this stove, then this stove. And that's how he proved all of his recipes for his first cookbook.
Wow.
I mean, they all work perfectly because of that. All right. While that was going on, upstairs, there was a kitchen. They were cooking. They were working for some party or something. And Paul was still walking. He was lumbering a bunch. He was a heavy guy, right? One of the guys had a bain-marie, a rondo rather, that was full of oil that he'd just taken off a stove that he'd been frying in.
Oh, man.
And he put it on the floor. And Paul stepped back into it.
Oh, no.
All right. And Paul had severe burns on and fell. I mean, it was just, it was the worst nightmare you can imagine in a kitchen accident.
I'm just visualizing.
You hear that and your body immediately.
And just to such a good man, too. It just makes it that much.
He said, get me help now. He ended up, he had third-degree burns on one of his feet. And for somebody that big, treating you is very difficult, very dicey.
Yeah.
They ended up setting him up in an RV out front of the restaurant. And he did the same damn thing in front of the restaurant, out of an RV, and he ran that restaurant all day, okay?
I don't want to forget that this is a story about the two of you, but
No,
I'm loving
No.
Paul's stories.
Paul was great. Paul got a lot of Paul stories, but he was a major influence on my life and on how you get up and you do it again.
Distill that influence.
Yeah, get up.
What was the just get up?
Get your ass up, out, get moving
Just
again.
do it. Show
nothing's going to happen if you keep sitting there.
Ain't nothing to it.
Nothing to it.
But to do it.
Let it go.
I think he was also very exacting about what he did and how he did food, because Pierre was telling me about stories about how he'd go and see Paul, and Paul would do about 8 iterations of the same dessert. And just change it slightly every single time, and just looking for a better taste.
The slightest edge.
Yeah, right, Pete?
We did 23 iterations of a mocha cream cake one afternoon. 23.
Wow.
Okay? They had kitchens. They had 3 people upstairs baking. All right. Nope. Change this. Nope. Do that. Do this. Change this. All right. And now go back to the third one you showed me. Do it again. And bring me that one. Bring me this one. I mean, just back and forth like that. End of the day, you felt terrible. Because you had so much sugar in you. You're just like,
It feels like me after like 3 or 4 interviews in one day that everyone wants to feed you. You're like, yeah, of course. By the first one, I can relate.
Yeah. Well, this was like how, And Paul would remember, exactly what he liked about number 3, and then there was number 9 that did this, and this is how we're going to put this together and make it. That's why his food worked. And he was very willing to be wrong, okay, and change. And he was very willing to listen to somebody who said, Paul, I think if you try it this way, you'll get a better result. And he encouraged that in all of his staff. And he had some pretty crazy guys working for him, okay? They had a staff when we were doing pasta with them that was just bonkers nuts. I mean, they were in there. They were all humping. They were all chugging along in there. We brought Macy's in there, as a matter of fact. We were going to sell pasta fresca in Macy's in New York. And they're downstairs in that fancy food part. And we bring the buyer in, and they're all like, one of the chefs, Randy, was looking out at me. He's smiling. I'm going, uh-oh. And so dinner comes. And you remember you sat at big tables here. It was open seating. People sat with people. You didn't get a table to yourself. We got 4 of us there, so we filled a 4-top up. And they had a seafood pasta dish that was just spectacular. And so this thing lands in front of me. It must have weighed 7 pounds, 8 pounds. Randy had piled this thing up like this. And they're all looking out of the window of the kitchen to see how the reaction would be. And we were just cracking up.
I'm loving the stories. Thank you so much.
It was fun.
But I want to hear more about how to recreate and have the same level of success that you two have built for yourself doing your level of work. And how big of a deal was it to have somebody like Paul Prudhomme be your first customer?
He spent the whole day calling every chef in town that he had a number for and recommended us.
So a little lesson in the power of networking.
Boy, was it.
Yeah.
Boy, was it. And Paul, when Paul Prudhomme called, you did take the call.
Yeah.
Okay. End of statement.
So how did you first, was it because you were from New Orleans? How did you make this connection?
With Paul?
Yes.
I had missed, because being in San Francisco, his rise in commanders was between 75 and in 79 he opened K-Paul's and was going forward. So he'd been in business for about 2 years when I got there, and had, gone from, I was commanders, and I'm pretty good, to getting pretty heavy press, and his stature had really grown in the industry, and I was told I could see him, and I asked for an appointment. He said, "Sure, come see me. You making fresh that? Yeah, I'd like to see what that looks like." And like I said, he was always going to see things, and he was willing to try new things.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a big lesson too. And again, we're just learning through our mentors, right? You would think a restaurant like K-Paul's, which was just so known for it being like the essence, or like at least his rendition of the essence of Cajun, or wouldn't have been Cajun. I'm sorry, Creole, correct?
No, he's Cajun.
Oh, he's Cajun.
He's definitely Cajun. Creole's New Orleans. Cajun is the country.
Thank you very much.